Part 2 of Travel Geek Documentary Thailand starts off with a case of temple madness. First at Phnom Rung and then at the stupa of Wat Pratat in Ubon Ratchathani. From there, I navigate both the crowds and the waters of the floating market in Chonburi. Not to be outdone, I head to the market of Thai Ruapali and discuss the fine dining of Thailand's coastal delicacies. After that, I jump out of a perfectly good airplane over Pattaya and hit the ground running to see the best, worst, and everything in between in Thailand's Sin City. Having decided to head to Buriram province, my first sight for the new year was to be the illustrious temple known as Phnom Rung. Overlooking Cambodia's Dong Rek mountain, beyond which the capital of the Khmer kingdom once stood, Phnom Rung represents something of a window to its historical past. Owing to its Khmer history, this temple actually sits on what Thailand calls the Phnom Rung Historical Park. Noting that it's not called a temple, presumably due to the empirical conflict that once challenged its solidarity and its more recent history of localized conflict in the region, Phnom Rung still boasts some pretty gnarly features, not least of which is that it was built on the vent of an extinguished volcano. Because of this, it stoically sits some 70 stories above the rice paddies below, putting it more than 1,300 feet, or around 400 meters, above sea level. All alliterations aside, this monument is the largest of the Khmer ruins in Thailand. It's also the best maintained. The Ministry of Tourism, in concert with Thailand's Department of Fine Arts, invested millions of dollars and 17 years in its restoration efforts, which started in 1971. Its inauguration in 1988 was offered by Princess Sirindorn, and the effort shows. It's absolutely splendid. The courtyard is vast and kempt. The walls, while showing natural wear, are a mazework of symmetry and fortress-like alignment. Its full name in Thai is Prasatin Phnom Rung, and it translates to the Stone Temple of Phnom Rung. Its construction extended through the 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th centuries CE, given the etchings and building styles. It's thought to have begun with King Suryavarman II, who also oversaw construction of temples all over current-day Cambodia. Facing east, this complex points toward Angkor Wat, and Angkor Wat faces right back here. Barring the assumption that this holds some kind of significance, there are only 4 great Khmer monuments in Southeast Asia. The other temples face different directions. Prasat Kawihan faces north, and Prasat Bimai faces southeast. Most of the smaller monuments face east, which is more an emergence of its Hindu influences. And that being the case, Phnom Rung actually symbolizes Mount Kailash, Lord Shiva's heavenly home. These are the Khmer era ruins known as Phnom Rung, and they're kind of like the Angkor Wat of Thailand. They're pretty close actually to Cambodia and are from the same era. These stones were all carved up in the northern reaches of like Myanmar in the mountains and then carried down here by elephants, if you can believe that. If you look, it looks like there's like little machine gun holes in all of the rocks. Well, these are the holes that they sent poles through these holes and loaded up these stones on the backs of elephants, 2 and 3 deep, carried them all the way here for the various kings that designed and had these monuments built. Most of the religious monuments here draws its religious roots from that same era that kind of evolved in 2 different directions, one to India, one of course to like the Khmer era empire. And it's pretty staggering when you look at it. It looks a lot like the Khmer temples in Cambodia. Same style of architecture, obviously the same gods. I'm not sure, I can't see the god on top of this one, but I'll get in there and take a look at it. But in any case, it's still amazing, and by any stretch of the imagination, it looks like it's got a lot of religious significance anyway. As for its construction, 3 tiers of stairways lead up to the base of the temple stronghold. A cruciform portico introduces the temple's entrance at the far end of more than 160 meters of tread-borne laterite blocks. Just getting there, visitors are flanked by 70 sandstone posts, crested with carved lotus buds. But before even getting to this intricate promenade, the north extension of the cruciform platform reveals a small pavilion that's thought to be the Hall of Royal Garments. In Khmer, it's called Palapala. In Thai, Chang Phuc. In English, it's called the White Elephant House. This once wooden structure would be where the kings and queens and their visiting royal families and dignitaries would don their regal regalia for special events, meetings, and cultural and religious rituals. Beyond this procession, the first of 3 Naga bridges showcases no less than 16 5-headed Naga, or mythical serpent creatures, which precisely mimic the same found in Angkor Wat. Continuing on, the magnificent East Gallery opens up to reveal a set of 4 royal pools. This might suggest that the foregoing courtyard wasn't designed so much for social gatherings, as perhaps for the benefactor's own personal, secluded visage. The towers climbing over each of the temple's galleries are scaled-down versions of the main tower, connected by curvilinear roofs propped atop false balustrade windows. If its Angkor-quality attention to artistic design hasn't yet impressed you, come here for the sunrise between April 3rd to 5th, March 5th to 7th, September 8th to 10th, or the 5th through the 7th of October. This is when the light of the rising sun shines directly through all 15 of its sanctuary doorways. This solar alignment, as you might imagine, is no accident. The entire temple was location scouted right on this hilltop. Built up 3 tiers, surrounded on all sides by castle-scale walls, and positioned with the effort of welcoming Shiva home to live with his most devoted, if calculating, subjects. This, if nothing else, is absolutely mind-blowing. Another good day to show up is the first Saturday in April, where the locals celebrate the temple's restoration by climbing Khao Phanom Rong, or the mountain leading up to the monument. The evening boasts light shows, sound performances, and costume dramas played out by local thespians. Ubon Ratchathani is often overlooked on the tourist track, which is one of the reasons that I like it. It's got an amazing and painstakingly constructed collection of temples, and because of its lack of tourists and steady supply of local activity, you'll escape the bustling promenades and crowded courtyards of the gussied-up city temples. Among these quieter, more localized temples is Wat Pratad, my first stop in Ubon Ratchathani. This chedi, which was built to resemble the Mahabodhi Stupa in Bodh Gaya, India, is a highly revered local temple. The one in India, which was built more than 2,500 years ago, was said to be located on the very spot where Buddha Siddhartha Gautama found enlightenment. I find this ironic, though, given the claim that enlightenment transcends both place and time. But I suppose we, as humble, pattern-loving humans, feel the need to commemorate things with location-specific monuments denoting even more specific dates and times. Nevertheless, it's an interesting idea which, at this structure's completion in 1957, seems still alive and well in the heart of Ubon Ratchathani today. To think that prior to Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Mormonism, and all the other Abrahamic religions, there sparked an idea of oneness in all things. It transcended Hinduism and became a tradition that drew influence over all of Asia. This temple showcases paintings along its facades that represent each of Buddha's lives back to that time. These are called jakatas. Standing 56 meters tall, this rectangular pagoda is crested at its chedi crown over a bell-shaped convex collection of walls. At the time of filming, construction was also underway for a new ordination hall adjacent to the Buddha tree, or banyan tree. It will mimic some of the architecture found here. For instance, it will have half-dome windows toward the top, shaped by the spokes of Dharma wheels like the ones shown on the outer walls here. And the grounds will extend and use the same marble base as the central courtyard. Another interesting note is that famed local wax artists create elaborate floats here in the weeks preceding the annual Candle Festival. Their creations often take first prize. Another very cool temple in Ubon is the Wat Thai Prachao Yai Ang Tue, representing more of a walking tour through Buddhist and Hindu iconography. This dizzying flurry of statues and sculptures spans both sides of the courtyard and even out into the street, screaming at its guests in almost vocal gold, yellow, and green paint. Wat Prachao showcases hundreds of statues, from the half-angel, half-phoenix Kinari from the Tavatisma realm, the Yaksha Guardians, the Chinese-style Huanyin, golden depictions of famous monks, and of course the Great Buddha, striking a variety of poses. There are also miniature Angkor Thom relics, like the four-headed Avalokitesvara, lions, Naga, Apsara, and a plethora of other creations fill nearly every square inch of horizontal space here. There are also more Jakatas here in the ordination hall. On to the famous floating market of Dam Non Saduk. There are a lot of floating markets throughout Asia, and many of them are just as interesting and colorful as this one, but I've never seen one draw quite the crowd this one does. This is primarily because Dam Non Saduk's Talad Nam is not an authentic floating market. Real floating markets, as is obvious by their location and necessity in other Asian countries, generally they tend to come together at the confluence of several rivers, or, in the case of Inle Lake in Burma and BSB in Brunei, at central gathering points for waterbound communities. The water upon which these boats float is basically a spillway that channels through the Dam Non Saduk region and floats out to the Gulf by way of several other tributaries. The market that was here before the locals started plopping their boats in the water was perfectly capable of sustaining the market all by itself. In fact, water was actually channeled into this particular covered area with the original purpose of disposing of market waste, like unused animal parts, water melting off ice packs, and trash generally. The sequestered waters from the nearby Dam Non Saduk waterway do several things. Besides being runoff for waste, they also create a tideless, waveless, controlled flow of water that allows people to remain tethered to nearby boats with just the infrequent hand to moor them together. Most vendors have to drive their boats here to put them in the water or leave their boat at a nearby dock. The practice started a tradition that brought in market-goers further out in the province, and eventually tourists started coming here to take their own tours and to snap the weekend event without having to travel too far outside of Bangkok or Pattaya. Once the popularity of boating caught on, the vendor stalls moved into the water, and now we have the Talad Nam floating market. Another interesting factor contributing to the notion of authentic markets is the necessity for mooring. This is a way to tell if a market has been created out of necessity or from heightened income from tourist dollars. This floating market in Inle Lake is a good example of a real, tidal market that caters to a clear necessity of providing a central meeting place for nearby villages and creates only a hint of tourist influence during the off-season. I arrived early enough to get a few uncrowded shots of the first locals and vendors. This early time is when your photos will be filled with the most local faces. But by mid-morning, you're likely to have plenty of foreign faces in your frames. The best time to arrive is around sunrise. Though there really aren't many vendors at that time, the light is great. The market has just enough visitors to get some real interaction shots and to find the best supply of goods. 10 o'clock finds the market in full swing, and you'll be lucky to make it out of there without exchanging body sweat with at least 10 different nationalities.
So here I am at Thailand's most famous floating market. They actually call it Talad Nam, and it means water market, really. It doesn't actually mean floating market. I'm not sure what the word for floating is, but in any case, they sell every kind of ware you can think of. Usually they're high-value tourist trinkets and things like that, all the way down to like handicrafts and whatnot. Probably the coolest thing you can do on the boat though is to go in and order fruits or fried foods. They cook them right on the boat. They have basically two sections of the market where it's coordinated, where there's most of it's kind of touristy stuff, and then the other part of it, the older part of it, is the food and the floating food area. And one of the cooler things that you might not know about this area, if you come here and don't hire a guide or anything like that, is besides the fact that it's very festive and loud, this is totally locally owned, locally created, locally started. It started a long time ago. I don't really know the exact history, but this is not government supported. It's not any kind of a chosen destination for the tourism bureau. The locals got together and they already had this floating market. They just decided to pool their resources, pool their buying power, order lots of stuff to come in here that they can buy and sell right on the river. So it's really, really neat. It's kind of like the Venice of Thailand. There's all kinds of little tributaries in here.
The walking stalls aren't the only place that gets crowded. The channel, too, can get completely inundated with boats 5 and 6 deep. This chokes up the waterway, prevents some vendors from making their way to the sides where they make sales, and slows down the water tours. To take a tour, by the way, you'll find a few embarkation points throughout, but the most popular is the smaller boats at the dock near the entrance. These are more intimate and can be shared with family or a small group of friends. Just like any other market in the majority of the developing world, there are no sanitation standards, which means no gloves, which means that people pick their nose, don't wash their hands, and continue right along with preparing and selling food. And honestly, I wish that I could confidently say that the infrequent nose goblin in your pad thai was the worst of your worries at open-air markets. My personal rule is to not only buy uncut fruit, which I will later wash before eating, fully cooked meat right from its source of heat that I will check before eating, and soups that come straight from a piping hot boiler. Any rice or meats that sit out in the sun will attract flies that have undoubtedly flown in from the nearest open sewer. Any hand-sliced fruits or snacks prepared by hand run the aforementioned risk of hand-borne contamination, and any food that is handed over may contain any number of waterborne parasites, as vendors sometimes rinse their hands off in this stagnant water. The only exceptions I'll make for this are foods I will cook later, like fresh seafood or freshly butchered meats, but this isn't really that kind of market. These are more often found in neighborhood markets, where patrons stop by on their way home from work. One final thought that I'll leave you with is that you should always bring 2 bags. One should be a backpack, and the other should be a small cloth bag to hand to vendors. Why would you do this? Good question. Daily markets across Asia use billions of tons of plastics that find their way to our oceans. This, by any other name, is a horrifying waste, not to mention its ensuing environmental crisis. Here's how it goes. After agreeing on your purchase, give your cloth bag to the vendor and make a hand motion to put the materials in the bag. If they don't understand and put the plastics in anyway, remove your food and hand the plastic bag back to the vendor. This will break the language barrier and pave the way for future exchanges that refrain from the use of plastics. The vendor will not mind saving a couple bags, and you will leave knowing that you've done your part to help keep a few more bags out of our oceans. Once you've completed the exchange, empty your goods into your backpack and free up the smaller bag for your next purchase. There's one more market you'll want to see before you head to Pattaya, the Chonburi Seafood Market, or Thai Pli. There's little I like talking more about than Thai cuisine, and it doesn't get any better than Thai recipes for seafood.
So here I am, I'm finally at the Fisherman's Market, and another one of the cool things that you're going to find in this part of Thailand that you're not going to find in other parts of Thailand is that the market itself, the area in general, has the coolest types of food. The cetaceans that nobody really wants to eat, like the arachnids, the bugs, and all that stuff. In any case, here's a pretty good example. These cetaceans here, they pull these up, and I'm not sure what they call them in Thai. Ben chua lai. Manda. Manda. Manda tale. Manda tale. เป็นเท่าไหร่
ตัวละ50 บาท
50 บาทเดี๋ยวเอาหนึ่ง
ยำไหม
ยำมาลูเป็น
ใส่
โอเคเอาได้
เอายำเลือดเผ็ด
70 โอเคเป็นโอเค
เอาเผ็ดนะ
เผ็ดนิดหน่อย So I ordered a little bit spicy, and she's gonna throw in some extra veggies and stuff. I'm not gonna eat it here. I'll sit and eat it later. But in any case, I guess she's just gonna prepare it. Let's see what she does.
ใส่ถุงใส่จานเลยทานเลยไหม
ใส่ตรงเป็นอันนี้เป็นเท่าไหร่
นี่เป็นปลาทอดชิ้นละ100
100นะ
ถ้าชิ้นเล็ก70 บาท
I think I'm also going to get one of these fish. They cut the fish in sections, including the backbone. So it's a vertical slice down the body of the fish. And they're really, really good. They're salty as they can possibly be, but they cook them with all kinds of cool stuff. I think they braise them, and then, I mean, they obviously cook them in some kind of an oil as well. So I'm going to get one of these. เอาอันนี้ครับ
และความเสียสละของบรรพบุรุษไทย
And what you're hearing behind me is the national anthem for Thailand. If you see the cops behind you, they're saluting. Go ahead and check the cops out. At 6 o'clock every night, the national anthem plays, and everybody in Thailand stands still for the 45 seconds to a minute that it takes to play the song. And I do mean everywhere in Thailand. Train stations, bus stations, any kind of government building, anything like that. Everybody stops, takes off their hat, salutes if they're in the military or the armed forces, civilian armed forces. And yeah, that's what it's about. It's about appreciation, I guess. National pride. 170 โอเค
สารคดีเหรอคะ
ใช่เป็นสำหรับไทยแลนด์อีสานว่า All right, it's a done deal. Get this somewhere a little more quiet. I'll eat it and I'll say what it tastes like.
Okay, my favorite dish is called tom yum moo, technically called tom yum moo, which is a spicy pork soup. Tom yum, which is basically just spicy soup, can include lots of different dishes. Moo happens to be pork, but it can also be made with seafood, or tom yum tale. So it's not exactly exempt from this palette of flavors. I'm just going to go ahead and say that my favorite food on the planet is Thai food. I love it all, and the spicier, the better. I actually thought that I liked spicy food until I came to Thailand, but the way that they infuse the spice is the real difference separating Hooters' junk-basted hot wings and actual flavored spices, making the dish hot to the proverbial tongue. We in America are so ignorant of this particular spice meets flavor contingency that we don't even have a word for it. Spicy just means hot. Pico is a kind of spice, but in Spanish, this would be called picante sabor or picante rico.
All right, so this is what's called a kaulam, and what they do is he takes like this rice paste stuff that's purple mixed here, and I'm putting it inside of the jaw leaf, and the jaw leaf is it actually makes a food called kanom ja, and what they do is so they staple it, and inside this little leaf it gets cooked over here where it steams it a little bit. All right, that's kanom ja. And this stuff right here is they've already taken like a rice sort of goo, mixed it in with sugar and salt and coconut milk. And this one is called khao lam, and it's actually kind of like a brownish pudding type stuff. They cook it right in there, and I think it's more viscous when it starts out, but it's very, very kind of just like a couple of grades thicker than motor oil, I would say. And it's pretty good too. I've actually had these before. They make these all over Malaysia, cook them on the side of the road, and sell them to passers-by. It's pretty cool.
After having lived in Southeast Asia for half a decade, I can somewhat begrudgingly admit that as a Yankee foodie, I knew absolutely nothing about acquiescing the palate with complementary flavors. And the Thai mentality toward luxuriating the human senses fits perfectly into their enforcement of the cultural imperative to treat the taste buds with the same liberal indulgence. But it's not just Thai cuisine that I like, it's the process. There's something about the sea to stall procedure that makes so much more sense than the way we do things in the developed world. Rather than farm-raising seafood in algae-forming beds that breed bacterial blooms from the animals growing in their own feces, and then catching, freezing, packaging, and shipping it off to faraway places where they are then thawed and either served quote-unquote raw in contentious Midwest sushi bars, or overcooked with unnatural flavors like buffet-style teriyaki, they catch their limited boatloads, bring it to market, and either cook it right there or put it on ice for takeaway. If they sell out, they hop in their boats and head back out for another catch. There are no regulations on daily catches, but in a system like this, it's self-regulating given that they don't waste anything. But back to the unbelievable food. Thais have invented these amazing little machines that broil food over coals. Technically they're found all over Asia, but I'm going to just go ahead and say that Thais invented them for the purposes of this discussion. They batter fish balls in rice flour and coconut milk and air fry them to taste. They salt and season sea bass and leave them spinning to cook over a bed of oven-hot charcoal. They fry split fillets of turbot and, if you're lucky, cod. They skewer squid and octopi and prawn and whitefish and just about anything else you can fit a stick through, and it all gets cooked a different way. It's just a marvel of inventive simplicity that all happens right here in the market. But the best part is that you get to eat it.
This is Taiwan. Okay. So I bought some what look like snails, and they're called Taiwan. They look like this. They're supposed to be really sweet. So we'll have to see how that goes. She heated them up for me. I have no idea what they taste like. I've never had snails or might even be hermit crabs. I don't even know. I guess we'll have to find out. Alright, so as promised, I'm going to talk about all the foods that I bought at the fisherman's market down in Chonburi. But I didn't want to talk about them in the market because it's like crazy loud down there. There's like karaoke and people talking and screaming out orders and stuff like that. So I came up here to the tallest part of the Chonburi area. You can look over all the area. The mountain is called Khao Samuk, and it overlooks the whole area we were just at. It's really pretty. So in any case, the first thing on the list is Blah in Sea, which is, I don't know, I guess it's kind of like a catfish. It's a white fish that's been fried after being kind of broiled, I guess. It's always salty. It never fails to be super salty. It's tough. It's rigid, as you can tell. It's not flaky and falls apart. But it's so good. It's really awesome. All right, next up is the ao yuan. It is that snail stuff that I told you about. It smells very sour right off the bat. And it kind of has the consistency of lobster tail. It's actually pretty good. It's got a bit of a spice to it. I think they put spice in the oil or whatever. There's definitely an oil that's been put over it. It's good. It's just a little bit thicker consistency than lobster tail. But it's good. All right, let's try the squid. So squid in Thai is blamung, and it tastes like normal squid. This, however, has been barbecued and not steamed, not boiled, and they've put some lemon on it. And it's delicious. It's really, really good. It pops. The little armies. We'll see the arms. Again, very good. It's not dark meat, but if I would have to make a comparison, I would say this is the dark meat where the light meat of squid is the top part. All right. The last thing. I can't remember what these are called, even in English. In any case, it's very watery. This one is called Meng Da Thale, and in Thai, that is. Wow, it's unexpected. They put kind of like a cabbagey thing. They've sliced up some carrots. They even have little bits of peanuts in here. Add a little bit of crunch to it. I guess that's good because by itself the meat really doesn't taste like a whole lot, or because it's been seasoned so much I might not know that. Perhaps it does taste like something, but it's not a good thing, and so they've seasoned it up to make it taste better somehow. It does have bones all the way in it, all throughout. Altogether, it kind of just tastes like a seafood salad. Very, very seafoodish. So, anyway, there you go. Delicacies from Chonburi. All right, so here I am about to take my very first skydiving trip. I'm pretty excited about it. I've been sponsored by a company called Thai Sky Adventures. Here I am at Thai Sky Adventures. Harry, the owner, has had me out to do a jump today. So Harry, you guys have been open since 2009?
2009.
So they're relatively new, and what was the most epic dive you've ever done? Anything cool happen in the sky?
Oh, we've done weddings and wedding proposals. You know, you name it, we've done it. I think one of the funniest ones I ever did was the teddy bears picnic in the UK. Yeah, we had to jump in dressed as teddy bears. So a big teddy bear.
The most jumps you've ever done in one day was 21 flights? Or 26, he said 26, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot, and you can fit up to what?
Eight
in a flight.
Yeah.
That's a pretty busy day.
We have flight this weekend, I mean yesterday and the day before. It's like 20 flights a day.
Yeah. How much, like, is that one tank of, I don't even know what you'd call it. Is that one plane full of fuel?
No.
How many is 20?
We refuel every sort of 4 or 5 flights. Because you want to keep the airplane as light as possible to make it climb faster.
They measure that in liters, right?
Yeah.
How many liters is when you fill up?
It's actually measured in the plane because it's made in the US. It's 170 US gallons it'll hold.
Okay.
But we normally go with about 80 gallons.
Okay.
And we're using about 14 gallons a flight.
Wow.
Yeah, it burns the shit.
Yeah,
but it's a powerful engine, 550 horses, you know, and
single engine.
Yeah.
Let's hope for my sake I'm listening to when they
I'm sure
when
you'll
they
be
do
fine.
that.
Listen to your instructors, do what they tell you, and we'll be good. All right. When you find Yucca, introduce you to Yucca, who's going to look after you.
Great.
We'll then introduce you to an instructor, we can get you briefed, and we can carry on.
All right.
Does that work?
Thank you, Harry. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
man. Good.
smile, relax, and have fun.
That's pretty much it.
I think I can handle that part. I'll be right back. I'm gonna go jump off a plane. God, that was insane. Yeah. Oh. Thank you for not killing me. Oh my God, when they tell you to put your feet on the outside of the plane, holy shit. Oh God. Johnny was the man. Spun us around at what? Mach 5, right? Easy.
Like Mach 10 at least. Pretty sure.
He gave me the controls and I was like, and he was like, here, let me help you. And he just like jacked one down and we were like doing this giant spiral. It was insane. Oh my God, that was so crazy. Oh, by far the coolest thing that I've ever had the pleasure of doing. When he drops the parachute and we see the other cameraman, Kevin, drop, I mean, it's like he just disappears into the cloud. I wish I had a camera for that moment. It was just like, we were basically at the same place, just like kind of drifting, and he was like, like he just dropped, like dropped right through the deck. It was insane. Oh my God.
Awesome visuals, huh?
Oh, and it's just an amazing clear day. It wasn't a whole lot of, is there a lot of wind? It was pretty normal, yeah? It's normal. We used it. I think we used the wind a couple of times, and he pulled the two controls back, and we basically just kind of, we weren't still, but it felt like we were just like drifting.
Yeah, we're stalling the parachute. We level out, kind of climb a little bit.
And then back down.
Yeah, it's an interesting sensation, yeah.
It's a hell of a pinch in the groin, but like, man, Like you don't even really think about it. You can't hear anything, but you don't think about that either. You're just like, it's just straight adrenaline. The first probably 10 seconds of it's the wildest. And then the rest of it's just like, you're just amazed. You're just captivated by what's happening.
It's hard to put into words.
I know, right?
You just gotta try it, you gotta do it.
I'm trying to find one adjective. There are none. It's insane. I think I'm gonna be skydiving in my head for the next like 5 days.
That's what I did. That's what happened to me my first time.
After literally diving right into Pattaya, it was time to go check out the city. I arrived in Pattaya on the week of Songkran, Thailand's most revered holiday, the traditional Thai New Year. However, having morphed from New Year celebrations into an all-out water war, you'll either love it or hate it if you arrive the second week of April. The reasons you'd love it might include cooling down with a million other soaked souls in a street-bound battle that has everyone laughing and enjoying the escape from both heat and work. The reasons you'll hate it will largely depend on the sneakiness of those launching water balloons and whether or not your camera gear takes a hit. If you're hoping to avoid large-scale hydro pummeling, stay away from Khao San Road in Bangkok, anywhere along the moat in Chiang Mai, southeastern Koh Samui, downtown Phuket, or basically anywhere in the central city district of Pattaya. Outside of the water war, Pattaya's beaches offer a lot of water sports of a different kind. Note, however, that I highly recommend that you avoid actually going swimming in just about any place north of Koh Phangan in the Gulf of Thailand. This is because the thousands of years of directing everything from raw sewage to solid waste out into the Gulf of Thailand has finally taken its toll. The beautiful iridescent algae that can be seen at night may be a beautiful remnant of the polluted shoreline, but the burning sensation in your eyes and infected pores of your skin may make you think twice about a soothing dip. Before you go in, note that the water temperatures here are in the 30s Celsius year-round, so it won't actually be that soothing anyway. Generally, the only people that go into the water are either wearing masks and wetsuits, or they're on their way to a boat. I'll let you make your own determination on what effect this pollution has on the seafood from Chonburi, keeping in mind that this is the reason that there are so many prawn farms that grow their stock far away from open seawater. Owing mostly to its envy of Damnan Saduk, Pattaya does have a floating market. But it's more like a collection of huts on stilts in a previously unused lake. It's a little weird too. There are Muay Thai fights held there. There's a petting zoo. There's a raised koi pond. There's a collection of quaint little archway bridges. And there's even a fish foot bath.
Okay, so this is one of the interesting Thai pastimes. It's actually an Asian pastime. It's having your feet sucked or eaten or whatever by the gala fish. And the gala fish are about 2 or 3 inches long, and they, interestingly enough, live off fungus and the salts and the oil from your skin and your feet. If you've been to the beach and you've got salt on the hair, on the leg hair, they'll kind of like pull all the salt and stuff off of your hair. It's, besides the fact that you know what they're doing is very strange and gross, it's incredibly ticklish. I don't really know how to describe it other than it feels a little bit like pins and needles. If like 1,000 people were just like poking you very, very gently with little rounded but not sharp needles on your feet all at once. It's hilarious and interesting all at once. But local people, they actually do this as a way to clean their feet. It's interesting. I've got a cut on the back of my left calf and they're all over it. It's really funny.
There are a lot of locations for partying throughout Thailand. Phuket, which I'll visit in part 3, is reserved for the most eclectic partygoers with transgender and burlesque performances. Koh Kopangan is famous for the full moon parties, where all manner of gap year 20-somethings drink, trip, smoke, and generally lose their shit before returning to the doldrums of their homelands. Bangkok's party centers rank high on the country's alleyway bar scene, but Pattaya is the place for fun of a different kind. Pattaya has a worldwide reputation of being the epicenter of Thailand's adult playground. Not for the faint of heart, this is the place where Thailand lets it all hang out. Literally. During the day, swaths of Russians and Eastern Europeans escape their Cyrillic computers to laze around on the beach and drink away the heat. They are everywhere. If they're white, they're probably hiding a deep love for Stalin. At night, however, these pasty tourists are replaced by stiletto-clad ladyboys and peacock-plumed drag queens. Block upon block of go-go bars, massage parlors, and escort clubs inundate the streets with a glitz of lights, pounding music, and scantily clad Thai ladies. They create a full affront from any angle. There's no escaping it at night. On the other hand, people don't often say enough about how Pattaya is also actually a fully functioning community with its own community events, schools, libraries, and so on. It's actually kind of a shame that the underworld of sex tourism moved in. But it had to happen somewhere, and that being the case, I may as well talk about it. The history of Ao Pattaya, or the Pattaya Bay, starts back in the 1960s. Surrounded on all sides by Thailand's hub for textiles and factories that had fully in mind to take over the North Gulf in industrial production. Hotels began catering to big construction bosses, as did condominium complexes for their families. Quickly growing from investments in seaside realty, Pattaya began attracting big spenders and factory workers from all over Indochina. With them came the need for bars. When the bars came, the need for managers arose. And, as is the case in most other places in Thailand, bar owners were most often local police. With local police running the game, there was little to prevent them from making a little money on the side from flamboyant exploits. And with that concoction of attributes, Pattaya became what it is today. Some say that the Russian mafia, which has something of a stranglehold on various interests in the nation's resort islands, had something to do with not only the expansion of the party scene here, but also the predominance of Russian and Eastern European tourists that still flock to this region. Whatever your objectives, if you head to Pattaya, be sure to take in a Muay Thai fight.